Hello again and welcome to another Warhammer 40k Mordy and Glory video. Today we are going to be doing a unit review of the head honcho himself, Lord Solar Leontus. In case this is the first time you've watched one of these videos, how it works is firstly I do a general unit overview. I go through the stats, their war gear and their datasheet abilities. After that, we then get into a deep dive going through the advantages and disadvantages of the unit we are looking at. And finally, we give it a score out of 10 and a thumbs up or a thumbs down. And so without further ado, let's crack on with today's video and dive right into this. Leontus is a new named special character for the Guard, and as a result, because he's so new, a lot of his lore and fluff is a bit thin on the ground, although there is some basic stuff in the Guard Codex. Leontus is the new Lord Solar commander of the Imperium. That means his immediate duty is protecting the Sol system and Terra itself. However, he is not content with sitting around in the Sol system and waiting for the enemies of the Imperium to come knocking. So he believes that a good defense requires a strong offense to head off any threats before they ever get near to humanity's homeworld. Arcadian Leontus wields entire armies of the Astra Militarum against apocalyptic invasions and sector-wide insurgencies. A war scholar and master tactician, the Lord Commander Solar bestrides the battlefield on his cybernetic stallion, Constantine, leveling his blade at the foe as he bellows his orders. Looking like a hero from ancient times, the Lord Solar inspires awe and confidence in the men around him, whilst at the same time instilling fear and dread into his opponents. But that is the fluff. What about the crunch? How does this guy work on the tabletop? Well, firstly, he is an HQ choice, which means you will find him in the same section as other named characters like Creed and Strachan and some of your other leaders like your Caden Castellan and Command Squads. He is a single model and is the new Supreme Commander in the Astra Militarum book, meaning he comes with a whole boatload of special abilities and a quite impressive stat line. Despite the fact he is but a man, he does have a movement of 12, I imagine that is represented by his horse, and he has a weapon skill of 2+, a ballistic skill of 2+, strength 6, toughness 4, 8 wounds, 6 attacks, leadership 10, and a 3+ armor save. He is equipped with 2 pieces of war gear. He has Sol's Righteous Gaze, which is a special pistol, and he is also armed with a sword called Conquest. Sol's Righteous Gaze is range 12, pistol 2, strength 8, AP -3, damage 3. It's like a pocket battle cannon, but even a bit more powerful than that. He is equipped with 2 pieces of war gear. The first one is Sol's Righteous Gaze. This is a really powerful pistol, and I like to think of it as a pocket plasma cannon. It is range 12, pistol 2, strength 8, AP -3, and damage 3. Very tasty, if a little bit short-ranged. The second weapon he has is Conquest. This is a melee weapon that is strength user, which means it's strength 6, it's AP -3, and it is a flat damage 2. Essentially, it's a souped-up power sword. In addition to his weapons, he comes with a lot of datasheet abilities. The first one is the Artificer Refractor Helm. The Lord Solar has a 4+ invulnerable save, and each time an attack is allocated to this model, you halve the damage rounding up. This isn't a reduced damage by 1, it straight up cuts it in half, which is much better than reduced damage by 1. He also has the Collegiate Astralex. This is a little bit complicated, but the end result is actually quite simple. After your opponent has revealed their secondary objectives or agendas, if your army contains this model, you can choose to change one of your secondary objectives or agendas. If you do not choose to do so, or if your battle does not use selectable secondary objectives or agendas, then at the start of the first command phase of the battle, you gain 1 additional command point. Having the ability to change your secondaries is quite nice. There is some potential for some mind games with your opponent. Oh, I'm going to take no prisoners. Oh, I've switched it out to bring it down. Or perhaps I'm going to switch out an offensive secondary to a more defensive one like banners. There is a little bit of 4D chess that you can play with it. However, I imagine for most players, they're going to build their army list with some set secondaries in mind. For example, let's say you're going down an infantry heavy route and you know you're going to be going for inflexible command, boots on the ground, and raise the banners. You don't really need to start worrying about swapping secondaries out. Also, most of the time, if you do make a mistake with your secondaries, many players are nice people who will happily let you change it as long as no dice have been rolled or nothing serious has happened in the game. If you do happen to come across that guy or neckbeard, then at least you've got this in your back pocket to go, ha, you tried to screw me over. I still have my collegiate Astralex in the back of my pocket, and I can use that to make sure I correct my mistake. But long story short, guys, I rarely think you're going to end up swapping out one of your secondaries. More often than not, when you take the Lord Solar, the end result is going to be you get an extra CP. He also has the Heroic Senior Officer Aura. While a friendly Astra Militarum core unit is within 6 of this model, each time a model in that unit makes an attack, it can reroll the hit roll of 1 and reroll the wound roll of 1. This is really nice. It's like combining the auras of a regimental standard and a Caden Castellan into one place. So that does mean he is a fantastic force multiplier just by sitting in a big block of infantry. And finally, we have the best ability on his data sheet. Frankly, the main reason you are including this bod in your army, the Lord Commander Solar. In your command phase, you can select one friendly Astra Militarum core or character or battle tank unit within 6 inches of this model until the start of your next command phase. Each time a model in that unit makes an attack, you can re-roll the hit roll, all of them. And if it has the core keyword, you can also re-roll all of the wounds. I like to call this his supercharge ability because he essentially picks one unit and gives it a huge damage boost. But that's not all, because he has another ability that is often overlooked. His commanding authority, what allows him to issue orders, is the best out of any of the guard characters. Because not only can he do 3 orders a turn, not only does he know all the different types of orders, that's regimental, perfectus, and mechanized, but also he can issue regimental and perfectus orders, not only to infantry, but also to auxiliary. Now, auxiliary units, we're talking about things like Ogryns and Bulgryns. Normally, these guys can only receive perfectus orders, but if you have the Lord Solar in your army, he can actually give them regimental orders. This is massive, and we'll get into this in a little bit more detail in the big deep dive. One final little thing to mention about orders is he is one of the few models in the game which can give orders to super heavy units. As far as I am aware, and correct me if I am wrong here, but I believe only a vaunted Praetorian tank ace or the Lord Solar can issue mechanized orders to your Titanic units. So that covers the general overview of the Lord Solar. But now let's lift up the rock and look underneath. Let's get into the nitty gritty of this bad boy and start looking at some of the advantages and disadvantages in the deep dive. One of the most important things to bear in mind when you are looking at the Lord Solar is you are not looking at a combat beast. His individual damage output is actually very weak. He has a single pistol, which sure, it's pretty powerful, but it's only got a 12-inch range. You're really going to have to put this guy in danger if you want him to start actually doing some damage himself. And he's not actually very durable. He only has a 3+ armor save and a 4+ invulnerable save. Anyone starts spaffing off some AP-1 bolt rounds this guy, and you're going to find him folding pretty quickly. I mean, toughness 4 with 8 wounds, a decent-sized intercessor squad will see him off in a single volley. But what he lacks in individual combat prowess, he more than makes up for in his ability to be a significant force multiplier. Due to the fact that he is on a pretty big base, he can hand out that reroll ones to hit and wound aura to a huge amount of units. You could easily cram 60 infantry around the Lord Solar and have him buff them all in one go. Don't forget, he can do regimental orders as well. So you could have him handing out take aim to some units, move to others, and maybe a bit of remain vigilant to some other units to really make quite an effective and flexible death ball. If you're not sure what infantry is best to pair with the Lord Solar, you can't go wrong with giving him a royal bodyguard of Kazakin or Scions. These elite troops often come with a shed load of special weapons, and the fact that they can cram so much firepower into relatively small and affordable units means that you can get a lot of them supported by the Lord Solar. But it's not just infantry that can benefit from the Lord Solar. Don't forget that Sentinels do have the regimental and core keywords, which means squadrons of Sentinels will benefit from his heroic senior officer aura. As bonkers as this might sound, and you may not want to take it to this extreme, but if you've got the models, I highly recommend that you try this out at least once. You can take 18 Sentinels in a guard army, 9 scout and 9 armored. And due to the size of everyone's base and the fact that you can conga line units back towards the Lord Solar, you can have them all benefiting from that reroll ones to hit, reroll ones to wound. And because he's got 3 orders, he can happily spread those out and give them all take aim. Suddenly, you've got 18 Sentinels with maybe plasma cannons and hunter killer missiles, all hitting on 3s. Rerolling ones to hit and wound. That's going to have a very big effect on your opponent. It's going to do a lot of damage. But don't worry if you don't have a million Sentinels lying around or whole armadas of elite infantry. The Lord Solar will still work perfectly okay with a nice block of regular infantry like Cading Shock Troopers and infantry squads. I was just using those as examples of how far you can push this guy's ability. However, whilst the rerolls are all very good, it's important to remember that you can get exactly the same effect from a Cadian Castellan and a command squad, and that'll be way cheaper in points. The main reason you're taking this guy, in fact, the number one point of including him in your army, is that Lord Commander Solar supercharge, because there's nothing else in your codex that allows you to give full rerolls to hit and maybe even full rerolls to wound to a single unit. It really is his unique selling point, and I'm going to tell you my favorite way of getting the most out of that ability. When you put Leontus in your list, you're going to want to pair him with at least 1 unit of Kazakin and a Rogel Dawn. What this will allow you to do is execute a Kazakin bomb, and if you're not sure what a Kazakin bomb is, don't worry. I'll have a link to that video at the end of this one. It's a way of getting a unit of Kazakin to do 18 mortal wounds in a single turn, but it really relies upon you having that Lord Solar. But the Kazakin is a bit of a one-shot wonder. It's only going to work for your turn 1. After that, you're going to need something else that can receive the Lord Solar full rerolls, and that's where the Dawn comes in. It's a big beast, it's got loads of guns, and it's tough enough that it's probably going to be around for the whole battle, so you might as well give that thing the full rerolls every turn and really boost its damage output. However, that tactic may sound far too sensible to you. You might be a man of culture and you're saying, Mordian Glory, I'm taking the Lord Commander Solar. I don't want some mainstream tactic that everyone and their mum's going to be running. Tell me the perfect way to use my Lord Solar. And I will say to you, okay, mate, I understand. What you're looking for is the Bullgrin Battering Ram. The Bullgrin Battering Ram is where you take full advantage of the fact that your Lord Solar can tell your Bullgrins to fix bayonets. That's right, I don't know where they put them, but they can put bayonets on the end of their Bullgrin Mauls, apparently. Because the Lord Solar can issue regimental orders to Bullgrins, they can receive the fixed bayonet order. What fixed bayonet does is it gives them +1 to hit, so suddenly your Bullgrins are hitting on 2s in combat, and it gives them an extra AP as well. That means that each one of your Bullgrin squads is putting out an unbelievable amount of strength 7, AP -2, damage 2 attacks, hitting on 2s. If you take 3 maxed out squads, you're looking at 18 Bulgrin. Each one of those guys is going to have 4 attacks. The Boneheads are going to have 5 attacks. You're just going to drown your opponents in an avalanche of muscle. What's great about this is you can use the Lord Solar to get those Bulgrin up the battlefield very quickly. There's nothing stopping you from telling them to move. That means that your Bulgrin would be moving 12 inches a turn. Interestingly enough, your Lord Solar also has a 12-inch movement value, so he can keep up with them without any problems. And so for the first turn or so, you move them up the board, and then turn 3, when you actually get up close and personal with your opponent, suddenly they get all the bayonets out, they fix them onto the end of the mauls, and they just go a-swinging. I'm not saying it's a good tactic. I'm just saying it's a tactic. It's something you can do. Okay, and it is pretty funny, and I imagine it would catch a few people out, because those Bulgrins are going to be moving much quicker than anyone expects, and they are going to be tearing apart stuff that they normally wouldn't really have any right to go near. The fact they've got AP2 and now Armor of Contempt's gone actually means that even when they come across things like Terminators, the natural nemesis of the Bulgrin, they're actually more than likely going to chew through a squad of them without much problem. Of course, if that tactic isn't memey enough for you, you can go even further and use the Lord Solar with Ogrin and execute some kind of mad 18-gun salute with a bunch of Ripper guns. I don't even want to know how much damage 18 Ripper guns firing 3 shots each, hitting on 3s at strength 5, AP -3, 2 damage each is going to do. But I imagine if you do encounter some sort of Marine horde, there's not going to be much left after a couple of volleys. But setting aside the spicy memes for a second, there is a point I am trying to demonstrate here with all of these examples. The number one thing you need to have in mind when you are putting the Lord Solar in your list is to have a game plan for him and to build your list around him. He is most effective when he is the center of attention, when the list is built to support the Lord Solar. If you are taking your normal list and then you're just slinging the Lord Solar into it, you will get a bit of a damage boost from it, but you're not using him to his maximum potential. He is quite expensive. At 170 points, that is the same as a Leman Russ tank. And if not used correctly, he might not actually be as good as a Leman Russ. You really need to make sure that when you're running something like the Lord Solar, who will be taking up a heavily contested HQ slot, that you are getting the most juice for the squeeze. But that covers the deep dive. Now let's get on to everyone's favorite bit, the final score. I'm going to give Lord Solar Leontus a solid 8 out of 10. He is certainly Mordian approved. I know that score is going to surprise a few people, especially considering how much I've gushed over this guy throughout the review. But there is a reason I've taken a couple of points off him. Firstly, he is pretty fragile and also fairly one-dimensional. Unlike some of the other faction Supreme Commanders like Morvenval and Abaddon, he can't do it all. He's not got good shooting, he's not got good combat, he really is limited to just buffing people. He's very good at doing it, but that lack of flexibility did cost him a point. I also knocked a point off him because he is a little tricky to use. You can't just plug and play him in your list. He does need a game plan built around him. And a common mistake I am seeing a lot of new guard players make is to just chuck this guy in their list. And as a result, I think he's a bit of a trap. I think a lot of guard players are going to end up realizing that they would be better off if they just took a command squad and Acadian Castellan, because they're not really having a great target for his Lord Commander Solar ability. So because of this need to hog the limelight, because of you needing to alter your list and fundamentally build them around him, I have taken a point off because I do think it makes him slightly tricky to use for newer players. But with a proper game plan and a list that is completely focused around him, the new Lord Solar is fantastic and an absolutely top tier unit. But that's just like my opinion, man. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Will you be taking the new Lord Solar, or are you going to stick to those more traditional senior officers and command squads to get your buffs? If you enjoyed today's video, make sure you smash that like button. It really does help with the all-knowing and mysterious YouTube algorithm, and subscribe to never miss an episode. Also, if you found this video particularly enjoyable or helpful, please consider becoming a channel member or Patreon supporter. One of the big perks you get for being a supporter is access to the Mordian Glory Discord, an online community of over 900 active members. It's always popping off in the MG Discord. We're always talking about units, tactics, army lists, hobbying, painting, and we do have a pretty spicy meme section as well. If that sounds like a ton of fun or potentially a helpful resource, then please consider becoming a channel member or Patreon supporter and getting yourself in that Discord. And I just want to take a moment to say a big thank you to the latest channel members. So thank you to Double D, Grezagors Bogle, Des Nation, Sergeant Dragonfire, Lord Oman, Red Morrison, and Jason Wayland. Thank you guys for doing your part. On top of this, I'm going to give a shout out to the latest Patreons too. So a big thank you to Patrick, Mike, Byron, Snake Eyes, Dustin, Yoakum, and Flying Pancake. Thank you guys for becoming Patreon supporters. And last, but certainly not least, I want to say a personal, special, heartfelt thank you to all of my top tier Patreon supporters. These are my war masters, the people who have truly gone above and beyond the call of duty. So a massive thank you to Alan Blunt III, Bonbon Vert, Phil French, Ross Miller, Swordfish Trombone, Alex Tengal, John Stubbs, Nick Walsh, Diesel Fox, Tom Sutton, and August Varney. Thank you guys so much. Your ongoing and generous Patreon support really makes a huge difference and is a massive part of how I'm able to do Mordian Glory full time. I hope you've all enjoyed today's video. Thank you for watching, and of course, as always, I'll see you guys next time.